Okay, how's everybody doing tonight? Everybody, welcome. If someone could just give me a shout out in the comments to let me know that you can hear me, that would be great. Welcome to another, well, I guess another Make Comics Great Again, Make Comics Fun Again. Let's see if I can reduce myself here somewhat. And Jules says you can't hear me. Great. Let me see. I'm trying to reduce myself on the screen. I don't know why it's not working. My layout is just not cooperating for some reason. Anyways, so I was going to talk about Batman tonight, but I was going to do that with John. And the thing is that apparently John is working nights now, so we will not be able to do Making Comics Great Again or Comic Book Team Up for quite a while. I think he's working all the way into December. He's doing nights. So unfortunately, John will not be available in the evenings to do Comic Book Team Up or Make Comics Fun Again. And a couple of minutes ago was the first that I could get to my computer to change the thumbnail. Apologies for the false advertising for anybody who has come in early and hoping to talk about Batman. But I thought I'd talk about the new Red Sonja movie. Not really. I'm not going to talk about the movie itself. I'm going to talk about Red Sonja. I think that everybody is just panning this movie. And, I might go see it. I really don't know. But the thing is that I think Red Sonja is hard done by. So I'd like to just talk about Red Sonja. I got to see if I can reduce my let's see. Just give me a second here. There we go. There we go. That's a little better. That might work. So let's see who's here. Oh, if anybody is here who is new, just to let you know, all we do is talk comics here, and I try to interact with the chat. So if you have anything for me, just leave it in the comments. Either tag me or put a question mark afterwards. I try to answer all the questions before I'm done within an hour, usually. And you can ask anything about my ramblings tonight, or my videos on Saturdays, or my comics, or anything like that. So let's see who's here. Pedro was the first in the room. It looks to be Pedro. Warren is here. Vaz is here. Jewel is here. He says, uh-oh, thumbnail change. Yes. Vaz, let's see. Talking about how bad the new Red Sonja movie looks like. Let's see. What does Vaz say? He says, the new movie is bad. Let's see here. I gotta reduce a couple of these things in this screen. Give me a second here. I don't know why this is so small. Okay. Let's see. And the new Reborn by Priest is awful. Okay. It is an isekai Sonja, current day girl that fall into a pit and exist as Sonja. Okay. I currently know nothing about the new movie that is out, really, except for the few reviews that I've seen of it, and it wasn't good. Let's see. George is here. Let's see. Scrolling down. See who else is here. Zia is here. Very good to see you. Let's see. Vaz says, I tried to watch the movie, stopped. Mostly a direct to Blu-ray movie, low budget. The comic book, yeah, I sadly read it. Issue number 1 was released last week. Not sure if he's talking about Red Sonja or the other book. Let's see. George says, the only good thing about the current Red Sonja comic is the artist, even though his art is nowhere near as good as when he first drew her. Okay, let's see. Manny is here. How you doing, Manny? He says hello to the chat. Okay, so Vaz keeps talking about an isekai. I'm not sure if that you're talking about Red Sonja or not. The isekai is about the new comic book series, not the movie. Okay. Oh, okay. So it's the new Red Sonja comic book series. All right. So let's talk Red Sonja just for a few minutes here. So, since I'm a big Robert E. Howard fan, I would just like to give Red Sonja some actual props. And everybody is saying about how bad Red Sonja products are coming out right now. So I guess to really start with the lore of Red Sonja is the fact that, first off, she was never supposed to be a Conan character or connected to Conan whatsoever. I think she was only in one Robert E. Howard short story, if I can remember correctly, and that was set in the 1520s, if I remember. Again, here's the thing. Thinking about current day Hollywood and the fact that they're all jump on the bandwagon of every new thing, You would think the Red Sonja in her proper format would be a story that they'd like to tell. Why? Because she is a female hero who is Polish Ukrainian, if I remember correctly. And she's fighting against the Sultan. Well, she's fighting against the Muslims. So there you go. I guess that's why they can't make it. But I mean, that's but it's the whole Polish Ukrainian thing, female empowerment, you want to call it that. That would be something you think Hollywood would make. They would probably give her a different bad guy to fight against. But hey, you would think they would use the original Red Sonja that Robert E. Howard actually created in order to make a movie like that. I don't know. The movie was made back in 2022, so I guess the whole Russia thing hadn't blown up by the time they actually completed the movie. Not really. Not like we've been dealing with it for the last, I don't know, 2 years almost. But that being said, they could have, I don't know, made a better movie than this. I mean, more connected to the Robert E. Howard storyline. So what they tried to do, it appears, is to connect the Red Sonja basically to the fantasy world, like a Conan fantasy type world. Now, that would be mostly a product of, let's see, that would be Marvel. But who was it, the writers that were the ones who actually did that? Let me think. Who was it? Was it, I can't remember if it was Marvel or not. Let me see. I'm just dredging this up from my memory banks. Let's see. I think it was Roy Thomas, who was the original Conan writer. But if I remember correctly, the first Red Sonja appearance was in the very early books. Yeah, it was Roy Thomas, because it was in the early books of Conan, because it was Barry Windsor Smith that was actually doing the art for those Conan. I think only Barry Windsor Smith got to maybe about 20. I'm not sure where he stopped, but it was only a couple of years that he was there tops. So the lore for Red Sonja, according to the original introduction of the character, if I remember correctly, for Marvel, to introduce her into the Conan mythos, was to take the general outline of the Robert E. Howard character and to put her into the story, but with a much more mythical twist. Because if I remember correctly, the Roy Thomas version of the story was that Red Sonja was part of so basically like a medieval village, which you would get in the Hyborian age, and the village was completely destroyed by raiders, and the raiders we'll just say abused Red Sonja as a girl, because she was only a girl at that time. So she prayed to Mithra, I do believe, one of the pagan gods of the Hyborian age, whatever it is. I think it was Mithra. And the god appeared to her and made her invincible against the sword of any man. So that's why she can, go on a battlefield with a chainmail bikini on, because she can never lose a sword fight to a man, basically. So, and she's not going to typically find other women on the battlefield. So she doesn't really care. So this is the basic mythos of the original Barry Windsor Smith art with the Roy Thomas storyline for her connection to the Conan mythos. She wasn't wearing the chainmail bikini then. She was wearing shorts, and she was wearing a chainmail shirt, if I remember again correctly, which some of the best art for the early books of Barry Windsor Smith for Conan. Just to let you know, beautiful stuff, even though she's very much in a different format, looking like a different format for her character. Anyways, that was the basic mythos of Red Sonja at that time. And again, as far as I can tell from the new Red Sonja movie, that's nowhere to be seen within a lot of this movie. I haven't seen the movie yet. Okay. Just tell you that right off the bat. Now, the first part of it is when it's basically the Roy Thomas story. The first part is her village gets destroyed by raiders, but I don't see any of the mythos part of it where she becomes an invincible character due to the blessings of some goddess, which is basically the Robert or the Roy Thomas version of the character, which if you're setting her in a fantasy world, that's probably the one you're going to use. But then again, who knows who owns the rights to Red Sonja right now, and whether or not they can connect it that much to the Marvel character. Maybe that's why they went in a different direction. If you know in the comments, let me know. So that's the basic gist of the story. I will say that of the new books for Red Sonja, I haven't read any of the new books except for the Zero book, basically, that came out. It was over a year ago now. So not this last free comic book day, but the one before that, I picked up the new Conan and the new Red Sonja, and I read both of those, and the Conan was excellent. The art was spectacular. The Red Sonja was so horrible, I threw it away. Like literally, I didn't want it contaminating the rest of my collection. It was that bad. It was awful. Story, art, everything was bad. Now, as Vaz says here, they've redone it into an isekai type story, but when they rebooted it, did they give it to a new company? I really don't know. Again, somebody in the comments, let me know. I'm a little bit behind since my comic shop closed down, so not that much up on who is publishing what right now. But that's my little spiel on Red Sonja. I will now go to the comments and see what everybody has to say, and we'll try to get through some comments, and we'll talk a little bit of Robert E. Howard and Red Sonja. It's only about 13 minutes in, but still, that's pretty good for a very, very on-the-fly topic that I wanted to talk about. Let's see. But George says that the art in the current Red Sonja comic is good. That's one of the things about the new Red Sonja movie. She is in the chainmail bikini. Everybody's saying it's an awful movie. It's put together spectacularly badly. And they waited 2 years, 3 years to put it out because it's just awful and nothing makes sense. But she is in the chainmail bikini, and the woman playing her is looking like Red Sonja. So that's a plus, I guess, for anybody who likes the original, well, not the original, but the mainstay look for Red Sonja in the Marvel books. Let's see. Scrolling down. See what else we got here. 21st Century, how you doing? Says hi to you all. Leonidas is here. How you doing? Leonidas, just a quick question for you. Do you have a channel? I'm not entirely sure. I've seen someone with that particular avatar having a newer channel. So I'm not sure if it's you or someone else, because it could be used by someone else. Let's see. Scrolling down. George says, the first for artists, I mean Walter Giovanni. Okay, is that Walter Giovanni is doing it now? Let's see. Yep, exactly. George says the original Red Sonja was a Corsair fighting the Turks. Yep. Shadow of the Vulture, correct. That would be the Robert E. Howard story. Although it does have a couple of other titles, like many Robert E. Howard stories. They have various titles when they're published in various places. Let's see. Jewel also says they probably don't have the rights to Howard's Sonja, just the Marvel one. They could. I'm not entirely sure. That would be interesting. I should look that up. I'm not that invested in it, but I might look it up. Vaz says, it's not a joke. A girl got to New York to have revenge about some kind of prostitute. Chase her in the subway and fall in a hole. She wakes up in the body of Red Sonja. So that's the new basic plot for the new comic for Red Sonja. So modern day girl from New York goes to get revenge for some kind of prostitution, which does play into the Roy Thomas older stories. That's something at very least. Chases her into a subway. She falls into a hole and wakes up in the body of Red Sonja. Again, that would be something that you would get in Marvel type stories, because you did get, let's say Mary Jane got transformed into Red Sonja. Mary Jane's body basically became inhabited by Red Sonja in, I think it's Marvel Team Up with Spider-Man and Red Sonja. So you have some historical context there. You've seen this before. So it's not the most outlandish storyline, I'll give it that. George says, Frank Thorne was the artist that designed the scale male bikini. Okay. Frank Thorne. Where did he do it though? That's a good question, George. If you know where he did it, let me know. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Conan the Barbarian 23 is what Jules says. Yes. So 23 would be not even 2 years in. Let's see. Rex says, aren't most, if not all, of Robert E. Howard's stories in the public domain? Yes and no, Rex. If you're in Europe, they're in the public domain. If you're in America, they are not. That's the weird thing about it. Because America has different laws because of Walt Disney, basically, as concerns the public domain characters and not. That's why when you had the original, I think there were Blaze comics that came out doing the Robert E. Howard stories, which they were publishing in Europe for whatever. Yeah, it was Blaze Comics, and they were selling there. In order to sell them in America, they couldn't call them Conan because that's the deal they basically made with the estate of Robert E. Howard, because they are not allowed to publish them in the United States or even republish them in the United States because they still don't have the public domain rights to them here. So yeah, it's just a big rigmarole. Scrolling down. George says, people keep saying chainmail bikini, but it's actually scale mail since there are scales and not chain links. Depends on your point of view, I think, George, just because I would say that the original shirt that she was supposed to wear was chainmail, and you can draw chainmail as if it looks like scale mail. A lot of people do that in the older comics. It's easier to do it that way. I do believe it's a time saver, but hey, I think some of the original art for it was more. I mean, the one we're looking at right now, that's definitely scale mail, but the original ones, I'd have to look it up again, but I think it was chainmail. Scrolling down. Rex says, RJ, I will say the one thing: the chainmail bikini does provide one advantage in battle. The distraction factor. Yes, indeed. That's one of the things I think about it for my books, indeed, is like the female characters. Well, let's see. Well, I put Cardinal up in the background for a lot of my other streams, which is one of my characters. She's dressed in a very, I don't know, we'll say a huntress type way, but there's a reason for that, because she needs to distract her basically male opponents most of the time in order to sap their strength. It plays into it. I think it's a good way to actually write a story. So hey, that's a great thing if you ask me, George. I mean, Rex. Let's see. George says, yeah, when she first appeared, she was wearing a chainmail shirt with breeches. Yep. Let's see. Jewel also says, original outfit in Marvel was chain shirt and shorts. Yep. Let's see. Scrolling down, George says, Barry Windsor Smith did the art, I believe. Yep. I can't remember. Now, yeah, if I remember correctly, there was the original Barry Windsor Smith, as I think it was whoever said up top, number 23. It was probably you, George. But there was also the Savage Sword of Conan. It's probably pretty early on in that as well that she appeared, but I think that wasn't until a couple of years at the very least after the Barry Windsor Smith appearance of her. So that, I think the chainmail bikini was the original story, was in Savage Sword of Conan. I'm just guessing off of what I remember, but hey, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Let's see. Then Frank Thorne designed the scale mail bikini. Okay, there you go. George also says, and in volume 2 of Marvel Red Sonja, they redesigned her again with a blue fur armor. Yeah. That was the volume 2. Yes. The volume 2 mini-series of Red Sonja. You are correct. They did go back to basically the original look. I think more of a Robert E. Howard look for her anyways. Jules says, Dynamite doesn't care about story or interior art, just covers. Yeah, I would completely agree with that, Jewel. Let's see. Matthew says, I love your stuff. Okay, if that's for me, thank you very much. Scrolling down. Vaz says, Red Sonja is still at Dynamite with The multiple covers probably the only good thing about it. Yeah, multiple covers in Dynamite, it's just ridiculous. And who is writing the original stories for Red Sonja that were published by Dynamite, or well, not the original ones, but I'd say a good majority of them are written by, what the heck is her name? It's the overweight, red-haired, glasses-wearing feminist woman who writes for Marvel some of the time. I can't remember her name. It's like, as soon as I knew that she was writing Red Sonja, it's like, no, sorry, no, I'm not reading that. Scrolling down. Jules says the first Warlord of Mars series Dynamite did was actually really good for the first few volumes. Okay, good to know. I am somebody who's partial to the Marvel interpretation of the Warlord of Mars. Scrolling down. Leonidas says he does not have a channel. It's someone else. Oh, someone is using the same avatar as you then, Leonidas. Sound Graver's here. How you doing, Sound Graver? She says, speaking of Howard, I'm reading through the Savage Tales of Solomon Kane for the Halloween season. Oh, very good. That's a good idea. The one thing about Solomon Kane is that I don't think, I mean, they did make a movie of it, early 2000s, but being a Puritan character, you're probably not going to see very much of them these days. Jules says Solomon Kane is better than Conan. Okay, good to know. Glad to see someone here actually enjoy Solomon Kane stories. I like Solomon Kane stories as well. Just to let you know. Michael is here. Michael says intellectual property movie rights are a mess for a lot of properties. Yep, and that's again depending on where in the world you're making the thing. Scrolling down. Pedro says, RJ, would you say that Vampirella or Lady Death are the response to Red Sonja? And if it is, which you like better? I never really followed either of those characters at all. I don't even think I own books where Vampirella is in it, but I think I'm not entirely sure. There's magazines. I think I have that she's in it for a smaller story. I don't think I own any Vampirella comics or Lady Death comics either. So Lady Death was more of just a 90s reaction to, let's see if I can make a really hot goth girl, basically. Vampirella was a reaction to basically the comic code and the fact that you couldn't, first of all, have vampires, and secondly, having her so scantily clad. That's why they put it. I think her appearances were all in the magazines to begin with. So I was someone who, as a kid, there was no such thing as comic shops back then. We just bought from the newsstand. So, I never had any access to the Marvel magazines until much later on. And so it was not a character that I even really cared to follow. So sorry, Pedro, don't have much to say there. George says, Michael Turner did a Red Sonja Mary Jane for Spider-Man Red Sonja team up. Michael Turner. Was Michael Turner? Yeah, okay, because I know it was John Byrne that did the art for that Marvel team up. But let's see. Jules says, those Blaze Conan comics sucked and had awful art. I expect more from the art of Euro comics. Some of them had fairly good art. I wouldn't say exceptional art, and it certainly wasn't what I would be used to for Conan art. But hey, yeah, I agree. Some of them were bad, but some of them I think were passable art, to say the least, for the covers, at the very least. George says, Red Sonja is better than Vampirella. Vampirella equals Lady Death. Okie dokie. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Let's see. George also says, in Pathfinder D&D, Red Sonja is an 8th level ranger that gets an armor bonus to her armor class equal to her, what is it? CHA, thanks to her archetype. Okay. So basically, is it that you can play Red Sonja in Pathfinder, or she's an actual character that they published in, I don't know, some kind of adventure? Because I know very little about Pathfinder. If John were here, he'd be able to tell me all of the lore for the entire thing, but I don't have John with me tonight, so you'll have to educate me in the comments. But yes, I think that would make a lot of sense to have her an 8th level ranger. Yeah, that would probably be the most descriptive part of the character. You could make her into a warrior, but ranger probably fits better just because of the origin and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. Pedro's talking to Jewel and says, I have to check it. I didn't get to watch the original. Didn't get to watch the origin of Red Sonja that RJ is talking about. Okay. Matthews says, it's Tarzan, but do you know the novel where Tarzan is a Royal Air Force observer on a US AAF B-24 and they get shot down and he has to save the crew from the jungle and the Japanese? I do not know that story. I do have, I think, the complete works of Tarzan, but I don't know when the last time I cracked that open. So no, I'm not familiar with it. I don't remember that story at all. But it sounds interesting. That to me, that sounds like a really good adventure story. And you summed it up pretty good there. That's a amazing plot summary for a story for someone to write. Let's see. Sound Engraver says, I don't think it's sad. I'm sure I'll read through it soon. Fear not. Yeah, I suppose not, Sound Engraver. To some extent, not having characters around today is a good thing if you want to actually preserve a character in some kind of fashion and they don't destroy it completely. Tony is here, and Tony says, RJ, any thoughts on the new Red Sonja movie? We've been talking about that, Tony. I haven't got to see it yet, but as I can tell from what a lot of people say, it's easy on the eyes and hard on the head. That's about the sum up of that entire movie that I can see. Gail Simone, thank you, Vaz. Yes, when Gail Simone was writing Red Sonja, it's like, no, I'm not reading Gail Simone Red Sonja. That, you know how, let me put it this way. You know how I did a video a long time ago, maybe you remember, about how when Kelly Sue DeConnick made the new Captain Marvel, the new reiteration of Captain Marvel, she basically took Chuck Yeager and shoved Chuck Yeager into a woman suit. And she literally said that's how she created the new character. To me, having Gail Simone write Red Sonja is like taking a fat chick feminist and shoving her into the body of Red Sonja as a skin suit. It's like, that don't work for me. Sorry, I ain't going with that. Let's see, scrolling down. Rex also says, there is a website called Project Gutenberg. I've been there many times, Rex, which collects nearly every public domain story under the sun. Found a number of Conan stories there along with the Howard stories. Yeah, again, that's the problem. They're public domain some places and not public domain in others. Let's see. I know that, Jewel, this is not a comment for me, but it's very good to read this out so that I can inform myself. He says, Vampirilla's first appearance was Vampirilla in 1969. Red Sonja was first appearance in 1973. Howard's Red Sonja existed first, but isn't the same character as Marvel Dynamite Red Sonja. True enough. Tony also says, Gail Simone turned Red Sonja into a bisexual Amazon that with bad body odor. Yeah. That's what I think. Who was I was listening to? I think it was the drinker. He was trying to get an analogy of what people would understand the new Red Sonja movie to be. And he basically said, think of a bad 90s television. What is it? A bad 90s fantasy television show stretched out to about 2 hours. So, like Xena, the Princess Warrior, or something like that. Let's see, scrolling down. George says, instead of having 16 variant covers by great artists, I would rather have them each do one page so that the entire interior art of the comic would be great. That would be amazing, George. I agree. It would be a little bit you'd have to be a seasoned I'd say comic reader in order to get the most out of a book that was made by 16 artists, but at the same time that would make a spectacularly better book But at the same time, here's the thing: to do an interior page, you got to do more than one panel. If to do a cover, you only have to do one. You have to do one panel, and that one panel is an illustration, not sequential art. So you can get you can get entirely different set of people doing covers than you could do to get people doing internal art. Not everybody who can do. Usually, everybody who does internal art can do a cover. Not everybody who can do a cover, who's an illustrator, can do internal art, which is sequential art. Those two things don't mix. Like the woman, again, did a video on this a long time ago. The woman who did the original covers for the Weapon X, all different Wolverine, she basically said, I do covers. I don't like sequential art. She just does covers. And that she was the woman who said that covers were for showing women feeling their feelings. Yeah. So anyway, scrolling down. Huh. How do you pronounce this? Liyasu? I'm not entirely sure. Why the new Red Sonja is low quality compared to the 90s? Is there a budget issue? I'm not sure if he's asking about the comics or not. Let's see. Solomon Kane was 2009. Thank you very much, Jewel. Scrolling down. Let's see, scrolling down. Michael says, Goth Rebel Dream Girl. Yeah, that'd be Lady Death, I guess. Let's see, scrolling down through a lot of crosstalk here. Scrolling down, Matthew says, Slash produced a remake of Deathstalker. Okay. Scrolling down. I think I might be getting to the bottom of the chat. Oh, nope. Just was getting to the bottom of my chat until it jumped. Oh, Charisma. Thank you very much. CHA is Charisma. Yes. Not a fake D&D fan. I never actually got to play D&D, as John likes to constantly remind me. What he rips me about it, but it's good. I only ever played not even the online version, the standalone games, computer games for D&D. My brother and his friends were always playing D&D. We shared a room, so I got to sit there and listen to them and read over the books, but I never got to play. So, and that was when I was probably like 10, so that was a long time ago. So yeah, I don't claim to be a D&D fan that knows all the lore for D&D. Even I mean, John keeps on telling me he wants me to come down to New York and play D&D with him. They'd have to go through the basics for me a whole lot quicker than an entire night's worth, because I'm not someone who picks up on those things really quickly, nor internalizes all the rules. Usually when we have a new board game, because we play a lot of board games here at my house, but when I get the guys together to play a new board game, we have one guy who reads all the rules, and basically he'll tell everybody how to play, and we just play the first time, and he'll correct everyone the first, second time that we're doing the rules, and probably the 100th time, but still, I never even read the rules. Let's see. Michael says, I always thought the Lady Death was just a female version of Spawn. I think that wasn't Lady Death. It was what's the other character? Oh, that appeared in Spawn. She's now a Marvel character. I'm sure someone will tell me in the comments. Scrolling down, George says, RJ, she is an NPC in the Pathfinder comic, which gave her stats. Oh, okay, very good. That's an actual good idea. Scrolling down, George says, I don't know how she fights Conan to a draw when he's a 16th level fighter and a 4th level thief. Again, if they follow the actual lore, it's because he simply can't defeat her. No man can defeat her in a sword battle. Just can't. Is the blessings of the goddess, basically. That's her strength. Scrolling down, Rex says, RJ, I know what Matthew is talking about. It's probably from the work of Philip Jose Farmer, who wrote authorized Tarzan stories, as well as did a biography for Tarzan as if he was a real person. Very interesting. I don't have any of those. But yeah, I guess there is a lot of Tarzan stories out there as well. Not just the original. George says, what does George say? Which is funny, Conan doesn't have a single level in Barbarian, so how is he the Barbarian? Yeah, that's a good question. Incubus Time Lord is here. How you doing? Shouting out to the chat. Jules says, I've only read the first Red Sonja book by Ace, but it's pretty good. That's where my Red Sonja knowledge comes from. Okay. Let's see. Scrolling down. That says, someone gave me issue number 1 of Gail Simone's Red Sonja, bagged and boarded it. I still didn't want to read it. Don't want to read it to this day. Yeah, save your sanity, Vaz. If you take my advice, that would be it. RJ Rex says, RJ, I don't suppose you've seen the new Primitive War movie. In case you haven't, it's the Vietnam War with dinosaurs and old school fun, from what I hear. So, is this the primitive? Because there's a primitive cartoon. Is that what you're talking about? Because other than that, I really don't know. Jewel might be able to clear this up. Jewel says, Vietnam War with dinosaurs. The writers definitely went down a conspiracy rabbit hole online before making that script. Yeah, I really don't know what that's about. Let's see, scrolling down. Tony says, I suppose the director of Red Sonja films transitioned their... Let's see. I suppose when the director of Red Sonja films... Yeah, because there was a whole bunch of different directors, right? They lost their ability to direct. Okay, because it was I think 3 different directors were tapped to do the movie. Anyways. George says Solomon Kane movie is better than the Red Sonja movie. I can probably just guess that one. But from someone who has seen both, I would take your word for it. Let's see. Scrolling down. Vez says, RJ, ask John to make you play D&D's Lost City. It's based on Conan Red Nails. Oh, yeah, that would really be an interesting night. Leonidas says, RJ, I wish like to make a manga in America and in something style. I wouldn't like to fuss a little of manga style America, cartoons, comics, and a little bit of Bruce Timm. Do you think that's a good idea? Not entirely sure exactly what you're saying, Leonidas, but I would say steer clear of American style manga, to say the least. If you want to go manga, go manga. There's a lot of people who do a manga style, especially a lot of South Americans who do a really good imitation, basically, because we'll say manga is only made by Japanese or, Koreans, possibly, but that's not really manga. And certainly the Chinese don't make manga, if you ask me. But there's a lot of South Americans who do really good imitation of the Japanese styles for manga. I would say go with that. If you're going to go North American, don't go cartoony unless you're going extremely stylized. Bruce Timm would be extremely stylized, if you ask me. Just pick one, not unless you're making up an entirely new style. That might work. But yes, thank you very much, Jewel. That's what I was thinking about, as being the female version of Spawn. Let's see. Michael is here saying good evening. I think Michael is going. Good evening to you, Michael. Tony says, RJ, do you think that morally binary pulp characters like the ones that Robert E. Howard wrote can ever be properly adapted in modernity? I don't think that Robert E. Howard characters are two-dimensional. I don't. I think they're two-dimensional in each of the stories. I don't think they're two-dimensional over the arc of their stories. Like I always say, I think of Conan as being a hero in training, basically, because the very first story that Robert E. Howard came out with for Conan, he was a lawful good king who was ready to die for his people, even though they offered him, saying, we'll give you more money than a barbarian should ever be able to come across, and you just walk away into the sunset. You just got to desert your people. And he doesn't do it. He says, no, I'm not doing that. Throw me in a pit, basically. Throw me in the pit of despair, which is the torture pit that leads to hell. Throw me in there. I will rather do that than abandon my people. So he is a lawful good king. That was the first story, because Robert E. Howard writes the Conan stories all out of sequence. And the first story, that's where he ends up. Therefore, I would say that the journey of of Conan throughout the stories when he goes backwards in time is one of a hero in training. And I agree. During each story, he has no story arc for building character. He has his character and he lives up to it, but it's the in between of those stories, if you follow them through, that actually gives you character development. So there is Pulp, there is character development within Pulp characters. So yeah, I think there could be a proper adaptation. Certainly, you just have to get the right people to do it. I honestly think that no, I'll put it this way: as a Conan lover, I won't say aficionado because I know a lot more people who have a lot more Conan knowledge than I do, but as someone who loves Conan as a character, the original Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan movie, that was not Conan. I'm sorry, but the origin of that character was just so different than the actual origin of Conan that it's not really Conan. That being said, it was a pretty good movie, and it was a very good fantasy movie. If you could go in that direction with one of the pulp characters and actually stick to the character, yeah. The problem again with the pulp characters is there's just, for most of them anyways, there's just so much material out there trying to pick the actual version of the character again, because I think there is character development for pulp characters. To actually nail down one specific version of the character in order to create a movie around it and a modern adaptation around it is very difficult. That's why I particularly like the, what was it, late 1980s, early 1990s Shadow, with who was in it. Anyways, I can't remember who the heck was the name of the girl that was in it. Anyways, but I like that character. It was very much an adaptation of one of, which would be the pulp book version of the Shadow, who, killed people and yes, fired his guns, not just to break things or to scare people. But there was actual death and destruction in that movie. And I say it was a really good interpretation of the character as a snapshot of some of those books. So it can be done. I wouldn't say it's a perfect. Shadow was definitely not a perfect adaptation of the character, but I think it was going in the right direction. Let's see. Jules says Conan is a fighter rogue for sure. Scrolling down. Let's see. George says, isn't Lady Death from Chaos Comics older than Spawn from Image? That I don't know. That's a good question. Again, I haven't. Lady Death is not a character that I follow very much, if at all. She's in some books I own. That's about it. So someone could put that in the comments because I don't know the answer to that question. Michael says, if no man can beat Red Sonja in a sword fight, then use a spear or an axe or a halberd. Diversify, people. She's that's one of the things about Red Sonja too, which I think Roy Thomas actually plays on very much, is that she is very much a ranger character. You don't really see her, stepping out onto a battlefield, but then when she gets into trouble, she'll challenge somebody. And when you challenge somebody, it's like challenge them to a sword duel because she's going to win with the sword. I think that was one of Roy Thomas's, let's say, ways of getting her out of sticky positions. Let's see. George says, Lady Death, first appearance in Evil Ernie from the late 1980s, while Spawn appeared in early 90s, I believe. Okay. That I did not know. Let's see. Tony says, loathes anything that Gail Simone ever wrote, including her Secret Six run. There you go. Someone of the same line as me. Ryan is here and says, RJ, do you plan ever to become a public figure? No, I don't ever plan to become a public figure. Who knows? Sometimes, like, John might talk me into going down to like the New York Comic-Con or something like that, and maybe setting up a table with a bunch of other people so that I actually go out in public. But I don't ever plan on becoming a public figure. No, this is as public as I get, basically. That's about it for that. Incubus says, even a cheesy, corny, and lame live-action 1970s TV series like Electra Woman and Dinah Girl is way better example of true comic book style superheroines than any modern characters from the present. I agree with that. It's a pretty broad statement, but I think it works. Let's see, scrolling down. Jules says, Solomon Kane isn't two-dimensional. He's one-dimensional. Destroy evil. Actually, I would kind of agree with that. Solomon Kane is depicted in the books as really one-dimensional. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Joel. Sometimes it's like he doesn't even know why he's doing these things. He just has a drive to do it. And to me, that plays in a lot more with the what I would call the suggested connection of him being a ancestor, having Conan and Kull both of as his ancestors, and this spirit, yeah, and basically the motivation and the will comes down through his bloodline, and it's very much of the blood. So he is a one-dimensional character. Sometimes he says, I must do this. He doesn't even know why. So yeah, that's a really good point, Joel. That would make an interesting hero analysis of Solomon Kane. I might have to reread all the Solomon Kane, but that would be a really interesting thing to do. Leonidas says, hey, RJ, can you recommend the best way to read Red Sonja, where to start and to finish? I really, like I said, some people are recommending the new-ish version of the comic that's coming out. To me, it sounds a little bit hokey. I wouldn't particularly start there. And then if you go back to the Titan books for Red Sonja, that's awful. If you go back to the Gail Simone version of the character, I think that's awful. So the only way that I would suggest to read it is read the Robert E. Howard 1 standalone story for Red Sonja for maybe some background, and then just go read Conan the Barbarian. That would be much more enjoyable, and you'd just be able to get to read the Red Sonja books that way. The thing is that if you read Savage Sword of Conan, it's very much done in a Robert E. Howard style, in that it doesn't have continuous stories. It just has one-shots, and it's all over the time-wise. So reading it in order doesn't really matter anything. But the actual Marvel comic for Conan the Barbarian, I think, is very, very, very linear. Some people don't agree with me on this, but I would say that if you follow it along with a map in front of you and watch Conan as he goes from place to place to place, he's actually following a fairly straight line and ends up in certain places. And it's very much, although episodic, it's very much a linear story, and you can start at number 1 and make your way all the way to the end. I particularly, this wouldn't be Red Sonja, because there isn't too much Red Sonja in there. And the thing is, again, even if you want to read the Red Sonja for Marvel, you're going to have to read a couple of other Red Sonja books, because they tie in very specifically to the Conan storylines of the Marvel Conans that were coming out in the 70s, which it says, if you want to read the rest of the story, you got to go pick up this book. So it's not all Conan. There's that, but it's a fun journey. To me, anyways. Leonidas also says, RJ, what do you think about Image Comics? Yeah, they had some hits and some misses. We'll just put it that way. It's not particularly something that, I own a lot of Image Comics. Let me put it that way, because they were the new hot thing, and I bought them all when they came out. But, and I have multiple copies of the first Spawn and all that kind of stuff. But it was never something that really took off in my mind as good storytelling. Nice art, not the best storytelling, to say the least. Baz says, comic book Conan was self-made, movie Conan was wheel-made. Yeah, he's basically a slave, which doesn't make any sense as is concerned the Conan lore. That's where it really breaks it. Incubus says, The Shadow 1994, the woman in the story is Penelope Ann Miller. Thank you. She played Margot Lane. That's who I'm looking at. Penelope Ann Miller. Margot Lane. I could just hear Shiwan Khan saying Margot Lane. Question mark, how you doing? Says RJ, what are your thoughts on comics presented through the medium of video using translations, sound effects, talking, music, etc.? I don't think they're comics anymore. I honestly don't think they're comics anymore. Marvel tried to do a very bad version of what you're talking about on their Twitter, while other people were doing extremely fun things with stills and movement for stills that have to do with manga and everything else, but I don't think they're comic books anymore. Like for me, I love making at the first when I played the trailer for my book coming out, which is uh, Fade to Blue, and I love making those trailers. And I use mostly the sequential art from the books for those trailers. Sometimes I throw in a couple of other things, excuse me, and a couple of things to make movement and to make it look like it's alive. Flickering lights and what there within Fade to Blue. There's a lot of movement of blue in the background. It's like a blue sun moving over the horizon. Excuse me, things like that. But I think of them as trailers for the comics. I don't think of them as comics. I honestly don't. There's a different medium, if you ask me. Now, they're good in their own way if they're done correctly, but I don't think they're comics. Tony says, RJ, in all my times reading the original Marvel run, mostly penned by Roy Thomas, I never got the sense of the characters. No, bisexuality. No, me either. Didn't get that at all. I got the sense. The whole point of Red Sonja is, again, basically, it is a sexualized character that doesn't have any sexualized undertones to the character. That's kind of the Roy Thomas point to this character, especially when they put her in the chainmail bikini, is the fact that she's very much attractive to the male readers. But the point is that she was someone who was abused as a child. She doesn't want to have anything to do with physical touch at all. And this is why she goes around and challenges men to sword fights and takes them down a peg. Like, that's the character you're looking at. That's not the character in her head. The character in her head, according to Roy Thomas, as far as I've read it, is the fact that she wanted nothing to do with touching anybody. And it's not like she's rogue or anything like that, but it's just, what happened to her as a child, it was like, nope, I don't want anything to do with that side of the story. And that was a very interesting way of making that character into we'll say two-tiered character, one that can look the way she does and attract the men who want to read the book, yet not cross over that line, nor even get anybody to think about crossing over that line. And that's where a lot of people go wrong by reinterpreting the Roy Thomas rules, if you ask me. Scrolling down. Let's see. We got 21st Century says Gail Simone's Titans run is a hard slog to get through after reading Wolfman's 80s New Teen Titans. Well, I would say anything would be a hard slog to get through after reading Wolfman's 80s New Teen Titans, quite honestly. Let's see. A man is here. How you doing? A man called Blush. I'd go with classic Marvel, and there were pulps too. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, there's probably pulp stories for Red Sonja as well. But yeah, I would start with Robert E. Howard and go to the classic Marvel. But yeah, that's a good point, Plush. Let's see. Joel says 6 books. Okay. Let's see. Scrolling down. I've been talking for about 55 minutes now. So see if I can get to the end of the chat. Let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Michael says the new Red Sonja movie made the original Red Sonja movie a masterpiece. That's funny. The original Red Sonja movie was a B movie. Let's just put it that way. Let's see. Scrolling down. Blush says, "Hail to the fourth age. Killer Bat Family cover thumbnail that needs to be the movie poster." Yeah, I was going to talk about, originally I thought maybe I'll get John to come on tonight because I didn't know if he was working late or not. Apparently he is. I was hoping to talk about Batman or Batman Family with him. That's why I originally put that up, but we changed it to the Red Sonja because John's working late and he's a working man, so he needs his sleep. Let's see. Jules talking about, I think, the Teen Titans. I don't know about Deathstalker. No. Oh no. Deathstalker, but Bar Queen, yeah, he's a fantastic artist. Still needs to be deported though. That's very funny. Jules says, I looked at the movie poster for this Deathstalker. His signature is on it, so yeah, he did that. Okay. I think I'm in the middle of a conversation here of somebody else's. Let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Michael wants me to keep talking. I still got a lot of chat to go through, I think, Michael. Let's see. Leonidas says, I'm going to be honest. Red Sonja kind of sounds like plot armor. The character, I suppose, is not because y'all like her. Well, I don't know. Well, I think that the original character that Roy Thomas put in with Barry Windsor Smith, it wasn't so scantily clad. But they needed a female character that was something that could draw in a different kind of audience, let's just put it that way. And they went with the one that goes best with the audience, and that played well to the audience, let's put it that way. Pedro says, especially with the comic code. Okay, because you got to remember, we're talking about 1970s here. We're full on into comic code. Pedro says, RJ, we talk a lot about Mary Sue's, but you have any gray suit that annoys you? Gary Stu. Okay, so Mary Sue and Gary Stu. I've never heard it put that way. If I have, it's been a while. Do I have a character that's a Mary Sue for a male version of a Mary Sue? I really don't know. Off the top of my head, Pedro, I don't know. I couldn't say, but I'm sure that with modern Marvel characters and all that kind of stuff, there's plenty out there. Let's just say probably the new Superman, Superboy, son of Clark Kent. That would probably be a Gary Stu. I don't know. That'd be the best I could come up with. Let's see. Scrolling down. Tony says, RJ, I always saw Red Sonja as the ethereal virgin using her sexuality to distract men, to keep them off balance so she could separate their heads from their shoulders. Exactly, Tony. Exactly. You are correct. That put it, hit the nail on the head right there, Tony. That's exactly what I saw it as well. Incubus says, they keep on trying to turn Red Sonja She-Devil with a sword and every other female character into a major badass, into Thundera from Marvel Comics, and they're missing the point. Yeah, they completely missed the point of a lot of Red Sonja. I think most of the Red Sonja books, since the collapse of the Marvel character for Red Sonja, with the end of Conan the Barbarian, first run for Marvel, just nobody got it right after that. And anybody who tried, if they even got anywhere close, they still screwed it up in the end. Let's see, scrolling down. Vaz says, RJ, we often ask if Conan was a hero in your book. What about Red Sonja? Is she a heroine? I don't know. Because again, the character, there's much more to play with Conan if you're talking about whether he's a hero or not, because you have all the Robert E. Howard stories. But if you're talking Red Sonja, you only got the one story from Robert E. Howard, as far as I remember. The rest of her origin really is a Marvel character origin. And a lot of people are playing off of that. And with her origin, she's more of a tragic hero than anything else, because she's forced into a life that she doesn't want. So she could be put in that role, but I would have to really do an in-depth dive of the character, because there's just not that much material on the character, I think, besides the one or the miniseries. Let's see. Scrolling down. Michael says the 70s were weird. You're telling me. Scrolling down. Jules says, Sonja is definitely not the ethereal virgin. Her origin is rape. After that, though, the book, at least, she couldn't have sex until a man defeated her in combat. Well, again, I think that's the entire point of why it was the virgin goddess, basically, that gave her the powers. Again, I'm not sure if it was Mithril or not, or Mithra. I can't remember, but it was the moon goddess. Basically, and the moon is always thought of as chaste, if I remember correctly, and that was supposed to be the connection. That's why she's thought of in that way. That's where she got her powers from. Scrolling down. Tony says, RJ, any thoughts on the scene in the Peacemaker followed up by Gun Superman? I don't watch Peacemaker, so I couldn't tell you. I think it's just an awful way to follow up Superman. I said that I think at last stream or 2 streams ago. It's an awful way to try to follow up Superman. Let's see. I think I hit the end of the chat, and look, it's wow, it's an hour and 1 minute and 15 seconds. That's great. We just hit the last of the chat. But yeah, Tony gets the last word with his comment on the Peacemaker. I really don't like the Peacemaker as a character, so we'll just leave it at that. Anyways, thank you very much, everyone, for showing up and having a fun chat. I just wanted to talk about some Red Sonja. Hopefully, if I get to talk about it again, I will actually have seen the movie. I think this is one of those movies where I wouldn't actually mind paying the money to actually go see it, because if you already know it's going to be a B movie, they didn't intend to make it a B movie, but it's already a B movie. I wouldn't mind paying the money to actually go see a B movie. Sometimes B movies can be fun, you know. Anyways, thank you very much everyone for showing up. As I said, it's probably just going to be comic book Make Comics Fun Again here for the foreseeable future, unless John's schedule changes. We might change them from Wednesday to Thursday, depending on what I have going on. Not that I will not have one. I intend to have one every week. If you don't see me here on Wednesday and you're going, where's RJ? It'll probably be a Make Comics Fun Again on a Thursday. We might switch it up a little bit and get some other people in the chat, just because I know a lot of people are saying, can you do it on a Thursday instead of Wednesday? People like, we have Sound Engraver. She's much more free on a Thursday than a Wednesday. So we'll see if we can draw some more people in to Make Comics Fun Again. And I'll see you all later on my Saturday normal video, and back here again for Make Comics Fun Again, either Wednesday or Thursday of next week. All right. Thank you very much for everybody in the chat and your participation, and I will see you all later. Bye.